Bill, this strategy of saying, no, Paul believed and the disciples believed in a spiritual resurrection. The body did rot away in the tomb. It was a spiritual resurrection and all that. You still get somewhat of a resurrection there, but it erodes the case for Christ, it seems, in that they want to back you away from showing historical evidence and say, you know,
right.
You
and
can't
even
use
more
historical.
than that. I think that what Richard would say to the Protestant liberal who claims, yes, I do believe in the resurrection, I believe he's spiritually risen, Richard will then use his naturalism to say, well, wait a minute, which is more probable? That there were hallucinations and maybe theft of the body or relocation of the body, or to believe that there is this immaterial, supernatural event that you talk about, and he will say it's far more plausible and probable to think that these were just hallucinations or something.
In other words, if you can get people of faith, if you can get Christians to accept that it was merely a spiritual resurrection, immaterial, non-corporeal resurrection, and Jesus' body was rotting away in the tomb all along, you have taken them in a step away from the Christian faith.
Oh, yes, quite definitely. And Richard will then say, you no longer have any reason then to believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Why believe in this invisible spiritual resurrection?
This is what is disturbing to me, Bill. Let me chase this for just a moment. I'm afraid that many Christians sitting in our pews today don't understand the bodily nature of Christ's resurrection. They are happy to think that it was an immaterial, incorporeal body, and it was just kind of a specter of him. And they go to John 20, where Jesus said, don't touch me because I've not yet ascended to the Father. And misunderstanding that verse, which we'll talk about it another time, misunderstanding that, they think that you weren't supposed to touch him because he was not material.
Oh, and that's absurd. I mean, John has the physical demonstrations of showing the hands and inviting Thomas to put his finger in the wounds, and Jesus eating fish with the disciples. Clearly, John believed in a physical resurrection body. In fact, it's unanimous in the Gospels that all of the Gospel appearance stories presuppose a physical, tangible resurrection body of Jesus.
So our listeners need to understand that. Bodily resurrection.
And not just bodily, ironically enough, Kevin, physical. A physical body, not some sort of ectoplasmic spiritual body, but a tangible, material, physical resurrection body in which Jesus rose.
A quick objection that I hear coming up, well, what about a person who's burned and there's nothing but ashes left, or there's a person lost at sea and there's just not anything left of that body? Is God going to be able, in all his power,
right,
which is ironic, to pull those molecules back together?
Well, the original Jewish belief in resurrection, interestingly enough, was not the resurrection of the flesh. Jews, in their funerary practices, would allow the body to decompose for a year until the flesh was rotted away. Then they would collect the bones and put them in boxes called ossuaries to be preserved for the resurrection. So actually, in Jewish belief, it was the bones that were the primary object of the resurrection. And you see this used symbolically in Ezekiel chapter 37, where the prophet is shown the valley of dry bones. Do you remember? And he says, will these bones live again? And Ezekiel says, Lord, thou knowest. And then he has a vision of how the bones are assembled and clothed with sinews and then flesh, and then they become alive. That's a Jewish picture of the resurrection. It's the bones that are the primary object. Now, the Jews, in handling the case of Jewish martyrs, where even the bones might be destroyed, knew that God in his power could create a new body out of nothing for those who had all earthly remains destroyed, and that in that case there are no remains of the body left, and so God will create a new body for them simply out of nothing or out of anything. But so long as there were remains, particularly the bones, those would be the principal object of the resurrection.
Bill, we want to do a part 2 on this because we're about out of time, because there's going to be a lot of evaluation and commentary that usually occurs after the debate. So
Right.
we anticipate a lot of that. A lot of tongues will wag, and the blogosphere will be ablaze. So we want to talk about some of the things that may occur. Let me mention this in closing. There will be some sour grapes as well, I think, among those who just admit that Richard Carrier lost this debate and that his arguments don't stand up to the evidence for the resurrection. And what do you say to those people who just want a grudge match?
I want to say emphatically is that if Richard Carrier did lose this debate, he did not lose it because of rhetorical tricks on my part. He lost it because his arguments were weak and he could not respond effectively to the evidence. This debate was not won or lost on the basis of rhetoric or clever debating tactics. He simply did not come to grips with the evidence, nor did he offer and sustain effective objections. And so I just want to insist on the argumentative content of the debate, and I think that there the Christian side clearly had the superior argument.